Welcome back. Toronto. This is a tough one, and it's a tough one because I've got everything on the board, but it feels different than the others, which is why this is set up differently than the others. This is a team that understands ownership, gets that things need to change. So Brendan Shanahan's out, and they're looking at streamlining the organization, having five assistant GMs that make a lot of sense. And so, I do understand that Toronto's looking at making some pretty big changes, maybe streamlining the organization. But this is a team that has been spinning its wheels for a long time now, and it does feel like big changes need to happen. And in the 11 years of Shanahan running things, it was his plan. There were always discussions about whether or not Kyle Dubas had true freedom to make the trades he wanted to, and whether or not those were potentially intervened intervened on by the team president Brendan Shanahan, and that's part of the reason why Dubas is now in Pittsburgh. But this is a team that definitely needs a new vision. And the Shanna plan, as it's been called, and that's why we have the Iser plan, because you have the Shanna plan, and then all these other ones are plans too. But when you look at the numbers this year, Toronto pretty good. So we'll go through the numbers from this year. Seventh in goals scored per game at 3.26. Eighth in goals against per game at 2.79. Ninth on the power play, 24.8%. 17th on the penalty kill at 77.9%. And if they were leading after one, they were 26-3 during the regular season. Leading after two, they were 35-1-1. All of these are numbers that are good. I mean, sure, you want the penalty kill to be a little bit better, but it's not awful, right? And then the playoffs roll around. If Toronto was leading after the second period, they went 5-0. If they were trailing after the second period, 0-5. So if they start well, they probably finish well, and if they start poorly, they finish poorly, and then you kind of cross your fingers the rest of the way. Now, it looks like Tree Living's sticking around as general manager. He's only 2 years into his job. Berube's only been around for a year, so my assumption is he stays behind the bench. I don't see any reason to make a change there. He seemed as frustrated as anybody with how things ended, so bringing him back next year makes a lot of sense. And apparently Shanahan insisted on keeping the core four together, which many will argue is the reason why Toronto had their struggles. I will say they could spread out their cap a little bit better. Absolutely, I agree with that. So some of that blame has to go to Kyle Dubas. A lot of blame gets thrown as well on the flat cap, that they signed these contracts before we ended up in the flat cap situation, and therefore, since contracts weren't going up in value, it made things look worse for Toronto than was the plan when those were signed. Now they've gone through three different coaches: Mike Babcock, Sheldon Keefe, and now Craig Berube. Berube, as I said, sticking around. And since 2016-2017, they are third in the National Hockey League in the regular season, 894 points in 700 games. And none of it matters. This is the thing that's amazing. You have a team that's third overall regular season in the NHL since 2016-2017. And it doesn't really make any difference because in the postseason, they haven't got it done. So going back to 2016-2017, I want to look at this year by year. 40-17-15 or 40-27-15 record for 95 points when no one expected Toronto to make the playoffs that year. Not going in anyways. So they lose in the first round against Washington in 6 games. Matthews, 6 games, 4 goals, 1 assist, 5 points. Nylander, 6 games, 1 goal, 3 assists, 4 points. Marner also had a goal and 3 assists in that series. So that's where you have 3 of what would become the core 4, right? 5 of the 6 games against Washington went to overtime. So coming out of 2017, things look good. Toronto was an underdog. They got almost every game to overtime. They lose in 6 against a Washington Capitals team that had finished first overall in the NHL and would win a Stanley Cup the following year. So, not too shabby. 2017-2018. The team makes a 10-point jump, 49-26-7, and they lose in 7 games against Boston in the first round. Marner, in those 7 games, 2 goals, 7 assists, 9 points. Nylander, a goal and 3 assists. Matthews had his struggles, a goal and an assist, 2 points in 7 games. They lost the 7th game by a score of 7-4. And humiliating finish for Toronto, but young team. And that was the conversation coming out of that is it's a young team, they're learning. So it'll be fine. 2018-2019, 46-28-8 record, 100 points, so they dropped 5 points, and they lose in 7 games against Boston again. So Matthews in those 7 games went 5 goals, 1 assist for 6 points. Tavares, 2 goals and 3 assists for 5 points. Marner, 2 goals and 2 assists, and Nylander with a goal and 2 assists. Nylander's had his struggles in the playoffs. This year he was pretty darn good, I thought, for Toronto, but he has had struggles in previous playoffs. And I remember some iffy plays by Nylander against Boston, but I mean, it's Boston, a very experienced team, right? And the last game in that series was kind of a blowout as well. 5-1 loss for Toronto in Game 7. So a bit anticlimactic, right? But things are going to get better. This is 3 times now. And if they don't have to face Boston in the first round, that's probably the problem. All right, 2019-2020. 36-25-9 record at the time of the pause. 81 points. They lost in 5 games in the play-in round, the qualifying round, to Columbus. And in that series, Matthews, 2 goals and 4 assists, 6 points in the 5 games. Nylander, 2 goals, 2 assists. Marner, 4 assists. Tavares, 2 goals and 1 assist. And in Game 5, they got shut out, 3-0. So who do you blame? The goaltender. Freddie Anderson took a lot of blame in that series. I didn't really quite understand how when you get shut out in Game 5, but all right. And there were a lot of shots of the Toronto Maple Leafs looking dejected towards the end of that game. Probably really glad the camera zoomed in on that. 2020-2021, playing just within the Canadian division. And I remember, Canadian division's created just so Toronto can make it to the Final Four. This is the plan. Gary Bettman wants Toronto in the Final Four because he hates Toronto, but he also really likes Toronto. So, yeah. 35-14-7 record, 77 points. They steamrolled to the division title, but they lose in 7 games against Montreal. And I've got the Homer Simpson choking Bart Simpson magnet on the board because this was a choke. This was the first time in Toronto's history, in the Matthews era anyways, where I looked and said, okay, this was a choke. And I was mad after that game, and I was legitimately angry. Nylander in the series, 5 goals, 3 assists, 8 points. Matthews, a goal and 4 assists, and this is where the Matthews criticism I think is valid. And then Marner, just the 4 assists. Yes, Marner criticism that year valid as well. Tavares only played the 1 game. He got hurt in the first game. Did that affect him the rest of the way? Probably, but should they still have taken out Montreal? Yes. They had 35 wins during that regular season. Montreal had 24 in the 56 games. They were up 3-1 in that series. They should have closed that out. They didn't. Then 2021-2022, 54-21-7 record, 115 points. And they lose in 7 games against Tampa in the first round. Well, Tampa, that's okay because, Tampa Bay is the Stanley Cup champion in 2020 and 2021. They go all the way to the final in 2022. So built-in excuse there. Matthews, 4 goals, 5 assists, 9 points in 7 games in that first round. Marner, 2 goals, 6 assists for 8 points. Nylander, 3 goals, 4 assists. Tavares, 3 goals and 3 assists. However, in Game 7, they lost 2-1. They could not find the goals when they needed them in Game 7. So, yes, that core 4, pretty good first round. However, when they needed them in Game 7, very quiet. 2022-2023, 50-21-11 record, 111 points. They're very good at getting above 100 points in a season. They get to the second round, and it's like, okay, finally. They're out of the first round, and they avoid Boston. This is why the fans are chanting, we want Florida, because 2018 and 2019, they had lost against Boston. They didn't want Boston again. And 2023, they almost got Boston. The thing was, Boston was blowing a 3-1 series lead against Florida. And so they got Florida, as they wanted. But Florida beats them in 5 games. Nylander in that series, 2 goals and an assist. Marner, a goal and 2 assists. Matthews, 2 assists. And Tavares with an assist. One thing about the Toronto Maple Leafs in this era, and the biggest issue with the core 4 is simple. If you shut down the top players for the Toronto Maple Leafs, you are not concerned about being beaten by the guys further down the list. This year, against Florida, I'm cheating a little bit by going ahead of where I am on the board, but the third line for Florida won them the series. Toronto's third line was not capable of doing what Florida's third line did. So that's a big part of the problem in Toronto is you just shut these guys down and you're done. Now, in Game 5 against Florida, That one got to overtime, and ultimately it's a 3-2 win for Florida there, so Toronto's out. 2023-2024, they finished 46, 26, and 10, so 102 points, and they lost in 7 games against Boston. A series against Boston, they should have won. They should have won this, absolutely. Nylander, a goal and Matthews, I should say, a goal and 3 assists. Nylander had 3 goals in that series in 4 games. Matthews only played 5 games out of the 7. Marner, a goal and 2 assists, and Tavares with a goal and an assist. And in Game 7, they lost in overtime, 2-1. So in 3 straight years here, you're seeing that the goal scoring, well, no, more than that. Really, the goal scoring dries up every year from 2018, 2019 until 2023, 2024 in Game 7s. And I'm only saying until then because we haven't got to this year yet. So goal scoring in key games dries up for Toronto. Teams know how to shut them down. I've heard people complain about, well, their defense needs to get better. Toronto's defense isn't necessarily the issue when they only score, 4 goals against Boston in that Game 7, and then 1 here, 0, 1, 1, 2, 1, and we're not even up to this year yet. So I don't think it's defense that's the issue, but people keep banging that drum, and whoever comes in to take over from Shanahan may very well agree with them on some level, and I don't think defense has been the issue for Toronto, especially the last couple of years. But we get to this year. 52, 26, and 4 record, 108 points, and they win the division. They get Ottawa in the first round, and they take out Ottawa. This team is different. We heard, how many times did we hear Sportsnet say, this team's different. This one's different. It's different. It's all different now. And people in the comment section were buying into this. Hey, this Toronto team is built different. This is different. Well, it's different. They get to the 7th game of the second round this year, so they won the most games that they have in any playoff set of this era, but they still don't get to the conference final. And in that 7-game series against Florida, Nylander, 3 goals and 3 assists. Got quieter as the series went along. Florida figured out how to shut him down. Marner, a goal and 4 assists. Matthews, a goal and 3 assists. And discussions of him being injured, sure, that's fine. But in previous years where Matthews has not been productive, that's a problem. Tavares, 2 goals in the 7 games. I thought Tavares played all right, but that being said, they lost 6-1 in Game 7, the same score they lost by in Games 5, and completely destroyed any goodwill that the fans and others, myself included, would have had towards them because of that amazing Game 6 they had in Florida, which they then immediately flushed right back down the toilet in Game 7. Just insane. And it has been hard to watch. But looking at these series, Matthews, 1 goal here, 1 goal here, no goals here. He had 4 goals in this series where they get eliminated, 1 goal in this one, 2 goals in this one, 5 in this one. So 1 goal here, 4 here. He's actually a better scorer in the playoffs during the first 3 playoffs than the remaining 6. I think it's psychological. I think this is a team that once the game starts turning against them, they don't have an answer. I think this is why they got blown out by Florida multiple times at home. I think the pressure's higher on them. And people will compare it to other markets. I think it's different in Toronto. I think Toronto is a very unique situation when it comes to the pressure those players have. 1967 gets mentioned a lot, and fine, rightfully so, but these guys haven't been on this team since 1968, so while, yes, the last 9 years, they have some questions to answer about it, it's a very long cup drought for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now, since 2017 in the playoffs, Marner's been their number 1 point producer. 70 games, 13 goals, 50 assists, 63 points. So around a point per game. I'm not surprised at the lack of goals. I do think that Marner's going to succeed somewhere else, and we'll revisit all of this. So and so is soft. I've been doing this on this channel now 9 years, and the discussion of which players are soft is always entertaining to me because this guy's too soft to play is tomorrow's Stanley Cup champion, and then we'll hear, well, yeah, they won a cup, but they weren't really the reason that team won the cup. So I still think there's just, oh my gosh. So anyways, the internet. Matthews, his playoff numbers are not good enough. 68 games, 26 goals in 68 games. This is one of the best goal scorers in the regular season so far in terms of his pace of scoring goals in National Hockey League history. And in the playoffs, he gets shut down. And I don't know if it's that he doesn't fight his way through the checking. I don't know if it's that a team can play him tighter because they don't have to worry about other players. But the 33 assists to 59 points is fine, but the 26 goals and 68 points really stands out. Nylander, 67 games, 26 goals for him as well, 32 assists, 58 points. So Matthews and Nylander are almost exactly the same point totals in the playoffs. Tavares, 51 games with the Leafs in the playoffs, 17 goals, 14 assists, 31 points. They have not got the points from them, and they've never had the supporting cast that can score. They've never had that depth of scoring that the teams in the Final Four right now have. They can all run four lines. Some better four lines than another, but Toronto, it's always felt like you have your top six, and your bottom six is kind of cobbled together. And it's not as important because really it's that top six. But in this day and age, that bottom six is just as important. When you're playing a full 7-game series, your top guys are going to wear down if you're using them too much, or if the other team can just key on them and not worry about those bottom six guys. I love Holmberg's work ethic. Can't hit the net. And that's just one example off the top of my head when it comes to Toronto, right? And this has been the problem. Sometimes they bring in veterans. They brought in Marlowe. That didn't work. They brought in Spezza. That didn't work. But they bring guys in, and then it just doesn't quite go, right? O'Reilly that 1 year. Still didn't work. In terms of goaltenders, Freddie Anderson's still the best goaltender of this era that Toronto's had. 10 and 14, 916 save percentage. I know he gets hurt. He's still the best goaltender they've had in the playoffs during this time. Campbell, 6 and 8 with a 915 save percentage. Woll, 6 and 6 with a 906 save percentage. Samsonov now, he's gone back to that. 5 and 8, the 897 save percentage, and Stolarz 4 and 2 with a 901 save percentage. I think Stolarz, good goaltender. Would I have used him in Game 7 against Florida? Wouldn't have mattered. I think I would have brought him in during that game to try to change things up and get the Leafs going, but Florida was still winning it, basically no matter who was in the net there. Could have had anybody in their prime. Patrick Waugh, Dominic Hasek. I still don't think you're taking Toronto past the first or second round in these series, because I don't think goaltending's been a problem. I don't. They haven't had that like big name, big goaltender necessarily to take them all the way to a final and win it. But I don't think goaltending's been the reason they've been losing either. So they have cap space this year. They won't have cap space by July the 2nd is my guess. $26.86 million in cap space. They also do not have a first-round pick this year, next year, or the year after. Toronto has mortgaged tons of draft picks in order to remain playoff mediocre. Very good during the regular season, but still playoff mediocre. And I get going all in this year because it's, very likely the last time we'll see all these players together, but it didn't work. Ultimately, it didn't work. They don't have a second-round pick next year either, so they have to keep themselves afloat. I don't see why they won't. But with big changes coming, it's possible maybe Toronto's regular season next year won't be as good as this year. Maybe, right? You don't know what's going to change with the chemistry on the team. So looking at the UFAs and RFAs to be, Marner, of course, Tavares, of course, Pacioretty, who's still making up his mind on whether or not he's going to continue past this season. Lorentz, I think Lorentz was their best player in Game 7 against Florida. Hakanpää was a mistake. Hakanpää being a UFA this summer, I don't think anybody signs him. I understand that he felt like he could continue, and I commend him for trying, but just Hakanpää's legs won't hold him up at this point in time. Then on the RFA side of things, Nyes. Nyes is the big name, and there's discussions of what happens if he gets an offer sheet. I don't think Nyes is going to get a major offer sheet. I don't. I think Nyes is a good player. I don't know that I would qualify him as being a lot better than like Holloway. You look at what Holloway got from St. Louis. Of course, he's got more goals than what Holloway did last year in Edmonton, so he's going to get more than that if he gets an offer sheet. But I don't know that he's worth, like I've seen people saying, well, what if it's a $9 million offer sheet? I don't know if I would match a $9 million offer sheet for Matthew Nyes personally, but that's just me personally. I think he's a very good top six forward. You don't want to overpay a guy. And for the new person coming in who's going to be, I don't know if they're going to have control over what Tree Living does, but I don't think Brad Tree Living would be making a good impression on the new guy if he gave a ton of money out to players, and end up with the exact same situation where you're paying too much money to too few guys, and you can't round out the roster with pretty darn good players in your bottom six. Again, I think their blue line's fine. I think it's the bottom six where they need a little more something, right? Again, Florida, you got Lusterinen on that third line along with Marchand. Pretty darn good. Carolina's got Martinook in their bottom six. He's pretty, like, you've got to have those players, and I don't feel like Toronto really has. They've been so dialed in on Shanahan's idea of this core forward. They're going to get it done. We're going to keep it together to the point where between Dubas and Treliving, when Dubas was fired, reportedly, Brendan Shanahan called the Toronto core four players and said, don't worry, none of you guys are getting traded, before hiring a new GM. So basically, the new GM, Brad Treliving, comes in, and the first thing he gets told is, by the way, you can't move any of these guys. It makes it more difficult to do the job as a GM, and apparently he nixed certain trades that Dubas tried making as well. So for all of the complaints about Dubas's general manager work in Toronto, you have to put some of that blame on Shanahan. So him being out means maybe things change in how they approach things. So Matthews' cap hit is $13.25 million until 2028. I have said this, and I'll say it again here. If I were taking over in Toronto and I had a say, I would shop Matthews. I would just sit him down and ask him where he'd be willing to go. I would see how much I can get for him, because you can probably get a mint for Austin Matthews. Like, you can set your roster up for a while, and with the right move being made here, you could really build up your team and make them better. Even though Matthews is one of the best goal scorers I've ever seen, in the playoffs it hasn't worked out. So after 9 years of trying this, I don't think it's crazy to think maybe we need to try something completely new and completely different. Nylander, $11.5 million until 2032. I think Nylander was very good during the regular season and the playoffs, so I don't think there's any chance of him going anywhere. It would be interesting if the core four was whittled down to Matthews and Nylander, see how that changes things. Riley, $7.5 million cap hit until 2030. I like Morgan Riley. I didn't include his totals here because I don't feel like he's helped or hurt their chances of getting through the playoffs. He is a core player. May very well end up being a guy who wears the C for Toronto at some point. Tanev, $4.5 million until 2030. I've seen some criticism about the defense, and especially a lot of it I've seen towards Carlo. I think Tanev sacrificed his body the way he always does, and so I think that's money well spent. Stolarz is at $2.5 million for another year. So this summer, they need to sit down with Anthony Stolarz and make up their mind and go, hey, here's what we want to do. And I say do it this summer because I think his asking price could go up for next year. And then you've got Woll, $3.67 million until 2028. I think Woll's a good goaltender, but is he going to be the guy to get them over the hump? And that's a question, right? Upcoming, you've got Easton Cowan. Lots to talk about Easton Cowan. And then on the blue line, Ben Danford's a pretty good prospect as well. But you don't have anybody coming up who's going to make you forget Marner or Tavares if they end up going. But Toronto's going to have the cap space to completely change things out. I would say after 9 years, I think that fans would be okay with making huge changes. And so we'll see where they go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe in the event you may not have done so already. I want this storyline to change. I do. Yes, there was a time where I couldn't stand Toronto, and I was so angry about everything being Toronto. And to some extent, there's still a lot of Toronto coverage, but I'd like to see them win in the playoffs. I'd like to see them get past the second round and see them in the conference final. See them get to a Stanley Cup final for the first time in forever. That'd be awesome. But I don't know that we're going to get there. I know this era, it appears, is done. The next era might be about to begin. What do you think? Who stays? Who goes? And where would you spend that $26.86 million in cap space? I know people are going to say Sam Bennett, and I'm not going to disagree. If the Leafs added Bennett and Marchand in the offseason, I mean, Marchand's not a young player anymore, but if they added those two players, I don't know. I think that could help, but we've said that before, haven't we? these players should help, and then we're here again. So thank you guys so much for all your support. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. I hope this storyline changes, because this just feels like we've been here. I wanted to do it different, but here we are. Let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe if you've not done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support as always. I will talk to you again soon.